Happy Friday Eve, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of Career Journeys with Coach Stella. I am here with another wonderful guest, Miss Alexandra Bookman. Let's give me a second. Let's go live on all platforms. We are live on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Just want to make sure it all aligns. All right. Okay, looks like we are a go. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday Eve. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which time zone you are tuning in from. Coach Stella coming on with another career journey. We continue our summer series of everyday people with everyday career journeys, sharing tips, strategies, nuggets, and hard truths of their professional journey. I am here with the lovely, multi talented, multifaceted Alexandra Bookman. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me to be a part of this chat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been quite the summer, to say the least. But I am excited to get into things today. So I start off all my interviews with the same questions for everyone. I want to provide you a space to introduce yourself. Please feel free to share any and everything you would like our viewers to know about you.
Oof, any and everything. How far back should I go? No, so it's nice to nice to meet everyone. My name is Alex Bookman. I'm a culture and inclusion strategist. And I know Stella because we've been working together for the last few years at Diversity at Workplace, and was really excited to do this chat because this is basically how we spent a lot of our time working together, was just having really good, meaningful chats. So I'm happy to be here, excited to be here. As far as about myself, some of my background, I grew up in Miami. I grew up had a very international upbringing. My mom was an immigrant from the former Yugoslavia. And it's funny because I don't really think of her as an immigrant often. Stella, I know your parent, you've talked about your parents and their immigrant experience, and I don't always think of my mom as one, but she very much was, and I think that definitely shaped my childhood, my upbringing, and a big part of my identity, and being in Miami as well. It's like a very international city. So I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different languages from a really young age. And then one of the other things that I think has really shaped a big part of who I am is that both of my parents were professors. And so it was really important for them that, my dad especially, to instill a curiosity in me and a love of learning. And so I think those were accomplished. I definitely am curious. I know Stella, we've worked together, so I'm not shy about asking questions. But yeah, and I think all of those things put together have impacted my journey, my educational journey, and my career journey.
Awesome. Ooh, a household with two academics. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine, but we about to get into it. um, so thinking back to your childhood, what did you want to be when you grew up and how did you come to that vision?
This is so cringe. This is so cringe. But I used to say, when people would ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I would say famous. I wouldn't Specify for what? There wasn't, I don't think I even knew or had something that I was like working toward. But I would say famous. And I was like, now thinking back on that, I'm like, one, that's cringe. And two, it's so funny. And Stella, you know this about me, but I'm a pretty private person. When it comes to like my online persona, for example, I'm not really on social media. I'm not active on social channels. I purposefully locked myself out of Facebook. I told them that my Facebook got hacked so that they had to like shut down my account, because I'm just private. So it's funny to think back now and be like, oh yeah, I I wanted to be famous. Um, I was with my mom last night, and I asked her, I was like, Mom, do you remember, was there something that I specifically said that I wanted to be when I was like younger and growing up? And she looked and she was like, I don't think there was anything specific, but we knew that you were a natural leader. And so that kind of stuck with me because it's interesting, like you see yourself one way, your parents see you one way, your colleagues see you another way. So that's something that I've been sitting with for since last night, since we chatted about it. Um, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Some kind of leadership role is a vision that I had. And maybe I just translated that into being famous.
Into being famous. Yeah, I was just about to say, I said, I was just thinking, like, wanting the spotlight, wanting a following, wanting a platform. So it's interesting that your mom kind of aligned with that, saying, well, we saw you as someone who was take charge in a leadership role. So, okay,
I'll
awesome.
tell you, just it's funny because this, I think I was saying that like when I was younger, and one of the superlatives that I got in college, in high school, in the yearbook, most likely to be on Real World.
I wanted to be, that was goals for me. I really did want to be on the real world. I really wanted to represent my culture, represent Black women, like just, not really understanding how, editing and production went, that no matter how much I tried, they still would have did what they wanted to do and make me out to who I wanted to be. But yeah, those, I really wanted to be on the real world.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I think it was. I guess it was, they were doing those the same editing tactics back then, and they shape you for the character that they want you to be. But I could see both of us really having fun in a house together.
Having fun in the house together, but also having, well, I mean, looking, I probably wouldn't have had civil discourse. It would have been uncivil as all get out. Um, so let's talk about your educational journey. What was your, give me some highlights of your educational journey. Feel free to go back all the way through elementary, up until college, and then we'll unpack college a little bit. Talk to me about your educational path.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to. It's interesting that you even mentioned elementary school, because I would think like, what? I don't. It's not relevant. Like elementary school. My elementary school was hugely formative for me. Um, it was a public elementary school. It was a magnet school for languages, and it was incredibly diverse. And they had three languages that you could choose from. And my parents let me, I think that's probably the professorial side, they let me choose which language I wanted when I was 6 years old. I chose Spanish. And it was because it was a magnet school for languages, half of my day was in Spanish from first grade through fifth grade, to the point that the Spanish that I was doing in fifth grade was the same Spanish that I was doing in AP Spanish junior year of high school. So it was full on, and I was fully fluent by the time I finished elementary school. And that was actually hugely formative for me, because it gave me, I think languages are so important because it unlocks a world where you can step into other people's culture in a more respectful way. And instead of just expecting them to come to you, I'm in your place, whether that's in Latin America, South America, in parts of Europe. I can put myself in your culture. Um, and it has opened up, it ended up opening a lot of doors for me down the line. This decision I made as a 6-year old. So that was my elementary school. Middle school, high school, also great. I went to a great high school in Miami, and then I left Miami to go to NYU. So I moved to New York City, which was not on my bingo card. I thought I was going to go to a big school with a college, with a football team, and that type of vibe. But I got into NYU. My big sister was living there, so I wanted to follow my big sister to the big city. My dad grew up in New York City, and so I kind of took a leap of faith. And another one of those decisions that was like, oh, yes, this was the right decision for me.
Awesome. Awesome. So talk to me about what that transition was like moving from Miami to NYU. And what did you choose to major in?
The transition was crazy. I think I I think I was probably better positioned for it than others because I had grown up in a cosmopolitan city like Miami, and I had spent a lot of time, like, because of my mom really making it a point for us to travel to Yugoslavia, or like after the war, to Serbia. We spent a lot of time in big international cities. So New York, I could handle it, but it was crazy moving there. I had just turned 18, and you're like, what is going on? So yeah, I think it took a bit to get my footing, but looking back now, I'm like, there's no other university in any other city that I think makes sense for me, where I could have gone. I wonder if other people feel a similar way. Like, once you've done it, you're like, oh yeah, of course, that. I don't know, like, for you, where are you when you look back on your college
Well,
experience?
it's interesting. I know living in New York was goals for my 20s. And I quickly found out that I more than likely roles outside of grad school would not afford me the opportunity to live in New York without 10 roommates.
Mm,
Um, and so I went for hall director roles in hall. If for those who know anything about hall director life, you part of your compensation is that you get an apartment. Well, I found out that NYU hall directors lived in Greenwich Village, and I said absolutely. And I believe I made it to the final round and didn't get the role. And I knew someone who was an NYU alum, and just inquire, like, why do you think I didn't get it? And uh, he quickly told me that he's like, oh, well, you have. I went to school at Iowa State. It's like, you have Iowa State on your resume. They probably thought it would have been um, a big cultural transition that you probably wouldn't have been able to handle. That's one of the number one things that they look at with applicants. And highly offended because I was like, I'm from Chicago. What are you talking about?
right, right.
So, but I did understand, and like, okay, yeah, I could have. I had I known that, I probably would have spoke to more of my experience being born and raised in a big city, and acknowledge what that transition would have been like, but yet I was capable of. But yeah, I don't know. I purposely went to a college town. Being born
Yeah.
and raised in a big city, I purposely needed a college town. Um,
And did you
to
like it?
That's another podcast.
I'm like
I
turning the tables back on you. I'm like, okay, Stella. So,
Right. I knew you would do this.
Enough of me. Enough about me.
I appreciated it. I appreciate looking back now. I appreciated it was a transition, and but I was there for undergrad and grad school, but I still I don't know. I don't
You're you're cutting up a bit for me.
think I would have been successful. Yeah. Did you freeze there? Uh-oh.
You were cutting up a bit for me. Are you go? Am I back now? Hmm.
Alex, you there?
Can you hear me? Hmm. You're totally frozen for me.
I can hear you. Just give it 1 minute. Let it reboot.
Okay.
All right. Are you back?
I'm back. Are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am back. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, this is the issue with going live sometimes. Apologies, everyone. But welcome back. Welcome back, Alex. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you. Can you hear me? Oh no.
Yes.
I can't. You're frozen for me.
Okay.
I can hear your audio. Should I
Let's
do?
give it 1 more minute.
Okay.
I think there is a delay. All right. Thank you all for your patience. We will be on 1 second. All right. Are you there, Alex?
I'm here. It seems like you're good, but then you respond
Okay.
delayed for me.
Okay. I think we're back.
Are we back? I'm like old school tech. I'm like, do I need to, should I turn it off and turn it back on, unplug it and plug it back in?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
There may be a delay, but if you are okay with that, we can continue to move forward.
Let's continue with the delay.
All right. So let's talk about college. What did you major in? And give me some highlights of your college experience.
Yeah, so I think this is the thing with my parents being professors and wanting to instill love of learning and curiosity is that I was a bit rudderless and so I kind of like went for everything, right? Like I was like, oh, this seems interesting. I'll do a little bit of that. This seems interesting. I'll do a little bit of that. And so I don't think that like, I didn't start college being like, okay, I have this in mind and this is gonna be my major. So it kind of became a race to like, what do I have the most credits in? And it ended up being history. So I majored in history. And then I actually minored in producing. I wanted to go, I think I evolved from the I want to be famous to I want to be like in TV and film production. So I minored in producing, but I was so like I said, it was like a race to who I got the most credits from, like almost accidentally, because I also almost concentrated in genetics and poli sci, and like all these other courses and anthropology. Like there were all these other concentrations that I ended up taking so many courses in. And then I was like, okay, that's not enough for a minor, but I'll minor in producing and major in history. So long-winded answer that was my major. How are we doing on the delay? We still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I
Oh,
think we're
perfect.
caught up now.
Good, good.
Yes.
Um, do you want to guess what my worst grade in college was from?
Oh,
I got a C plus in a class in college. Do you want to guess what it was?
hold on. Let me think, but not too hard. I would say let's the stems, the math or the science, bio.
Good. That is a good guess. It was background first. I had finished my credits for my history major and my producing minor by senior year. And I was just trying to, I had like some extra credits to fill. And I was like, okay, now I'm just going to do stuff that I'm like interested in. I signed up for painting 101. Painting 101. I got a C plus my senior year in painting 101. And it was my worst grade in college.
Thank you for highlighting that because I remember taking geology 101 and they called it rocks for jocks. It was a very inappropriate nickname. But do
Yeah.
you know I had to get a tutor for geology 101? Things that came so easy to everyone else. I don't know what it was about that class that I was like, I am not getting this. And thank
Yeah.
goodness for my tutor who was a TA in that program. He was double majoring, I believe, in geology and psychology, which was what I was majoring in.
Uh,
And he just broke it down for me, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" I might mess up his name, but I'm thinking of his name, but I don't think that's his name, so I won't mention it. But he saved me, and it was funny because it was me and a football player that were getting tutored.
oh my God. So you got the jock. It was
The truck.
so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened for me is that like I'm a crammer. I do better when it's like I have a deadline over my head and it's like, all right, we got 12 hours to write this paper. Let's do it. And that's when I shine. And you can't cram a painting because there's like layers and it's got to dry and blah, blah. So I would get to class the next day to like present my painting and it's like dripping paint off of it. And he's like, no, this is not going to work. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's fascinating that you recognize that about yourself because that is exactly what artists don't do. Like they take their time, and when it comes to them, it comes to like you can't rush the process. And you know yeah, and for someone who you know with you being a history major, this is a
yeah,
psychologist or a pseudo psychologist in
yeah.
me.
Hit me.
You're doing all this research. What is it? Albert Einstein said you spend 5 days, you think of a concept for 90% of the time, and then you actually do it 10% of the time. And I think, you cramming and getting that 12-page paper done within the night, but you've done the research, you've meditated, you've thought through it in your mind for the past, month or whatever. And then the last 12 hours before it's due, you get it all in.
Yeah, 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 yeah. My dad was the same way, and I think that's absolutely spot on. Like I wasn't not thinking about the paper, but I just like didn't have anything tangible yet. And it's like, all right, it's go time now. Like there's no more concepting left to do. It's time for the practical application. Um, Another course that I took that second semester senior year because I had an extra credit, my best friend was in the business school. And she's like, we've never taken a class together. Take a class with me. And I was like, okay, like, sure, why not? And she convinced me to take a class called entrepreneurship. Um, And it was taught by the VC, the venture, like the CEO of a venture capital firm. And he was like, he was not a professor. He was a CEO of a venture capital firm. He was like three-piece suit, no bullshit. And I took this class like just like so I could sit next to my best friend, and it was like, oh, this is legit. And it was basically about starting a company. Like how do you start a company? And our final project that we were working towards through the entire school year, or the entire semester, was to create a company that we had to pitch at the end of the year. He brought in some of his colleagues, and we had to pitch our company to his colleagues. And so it was a really, really cool class. And then when the class ended, when the school year ended, when the course ended, he said, if any of you are still interested in pursuing your ideas, I'm happy to be your mentor. And it was a group project. So the groups were formed. So he's like, I'm happy to be your mentor and like see it through. I graduated in 2009, right in the middle of the recession, the crash. I thought I was going to go into film and television, and I was getting like offers from amazing places, like to be a PA at the Daily Show, to work with a script writer from LA. Like I was getting great offers. They were like, but we can't pay you. I was like, what? That's I need money. So I didn't take any of those jobs. And three people from my group project said, we can't do this. Like, we're not going to do this. And one of the girls in my group said, I'm willing to actually try this if you want to do it. And I said, okay, I believe in this idea enough. Let's go for it. And so for 1 year after college, I basically founded a startup. And that was like my first foray into the professional world. And Stella,
Wow.
I got rocked. I
Say
got rocked.
more. Tell
I just it actually kills me sometimes when I think and talk about it, because if I if I had my experience that I have now, and my diligence and my work ethic that I have now back then with that idea, we might be having this conversation on my yacht right now. It was a job search and match website for students. It was essentially Tinder for jobs, way before Tinder was a thing, like years and years before Tinder was a thing. And we had an amazing website. It was beautiful. It was streamlined. It was intuitive, easy to use. And at the end of the year, so full disclosure, my parents were basically, the way that they were like angel investors in the company, by saying, we will help you with rent for 1 year. After 1 year, you're done completely on your own, and like this is it. And so by the end of the year, we had started making some revenue from the site, but it wasn't enough to support, and to support myself, to feed myself. And and my parents said, you had a year, like, sorry. And I said, yep, that's fair. And honestly, it was really tough. And I still mourn that company, but it was one of the best things that my parents ever did for me, actually, was standing firm with their boundary and cutting me off. And I had to figure my shit out. I had to get my shit together and like make my money. So I'm sad because the company, yeah, like I said, it was ahead of its time. But I wasn't there yet. And that's life.
it's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. With all things 2020, we saw the entrepreneurship boom,
Mm,
right?
Yeah.
And it usually happens around recessions and job market crashes. Even now, we are in. I feel like we've been in unprecedented times for a decade now. But with the major job loss market, we saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2008, 2009. You were a part of it. We saw it in 2020. We're kind of seeing it in 2025, but it's looking very different. And a lot of, we see the statistics around the unemployment rate for recent graduates.
Hmm.
And so you see a lot of them going into freelance gigs or the gig economy.
Yeah.
Um, but you touched upon, if you hindsight's always 2020, right? But you highlighted how if you had the work ethic and if you knew now what you knew then, you could have done it so much differently. And I thank you for sharing that, because I think that is something that is not talked about enough with the entrepreneurship route, um, and especially with recent grads or just young folks in general, young professionals in general, that there's a method to this, and there's a process, there's steps. And it's a blessing that you had your angel investors such as your parents. I mean, as a parent myself, that is goals.
Hmm.
I hope to be able to provide that and set a boundary and a time limit. Like, listen, you got till this to
Yeah.
make it work. Otherwise, what's the next plan?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
And I remember I was like mad at them at the time. I'm like, what? But it's making money. And they were like, then get a side job, And I started hostessing at a restaurant in the evenings. Like I'd work with my partner during the day and hostessing at a restaurant across the street from my apartment. Um, and but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And I either needed to eat and keep living in New York City or move back home to my parents' house. So wasn't going to do that. But it was a really, it was, I think probably as a parent, it was probably tough for them to see that. I know they thought the idea was cool and the business was cool, but like, how long can you do that for? And then speaking to what you said about like not having the experience, I remember our first day of the entrepreneurship course, the professor, the CEO, he said, when you're an entrepreneur, your work week starts on Monday morning and ends on Sunday night. And so a lot of people think like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm in charge of my own schedule. Like, I don't have a boss that I need to answer to. But like, it's a grind. It is a grind. And I was a 21-year-old who didn't know how to write a professional email. So put all of those things together. 21-year-old living in New York City who didn't know how to write a professional email. So like put all those things together. It wasn't the right time, but it was a lesson. There were lots of lessons for me that I got out of it.
Oh yeah. I was just about to say, let's talk about those lessons and how you implemented it into the next chapter. Talk to me about what was next for you after this business venture.
Yeah. So I definitely needed, I think I needed some like straightening out. I needed a boss. I needed somebody to be like, no, that's not, you can't do that in the middle of the workday. Like you can't, like you gotta work. And so what I did from there is I started applying to a bunch of jobs. I applied for a job at TED, the like they put on the TED conferences. So this was like early days TED. I applied for a job that I was wildly underqualified for. I got called in for an interview. I interviewed with one guy and he was like, you are wildly underqualified for this, but I like you and I like what you're about. Like, let's keep in touch. He reached out to me like I don't know, 4 months after that or something. And he's like, look, I moved on to an advertising agency. The CEO is looking for an assistant. Is this something that you'd be interested in? I think that it could help like pivot your career into, if you're at all interested in advertising, like this could this could be interesting for you. I was dead broke. I was like eating my friend's moldy leftovers. And I was like, I didn't, this wasn't a part of my plan, but I went for the interview and they told me what the salary would be. And I was like, I will do anything to get this job. Like anything. It was like, it was more money than I could have ever imagined. Um, I'll share since we're being honest here. It was $65,000 a year for my first job, and going from no money, like, hostess a few nights a week, to somebody wanting to pay me $65,000. I was like, I will literally do anything. And I got the job. And so, yeah, it was my first job. I ended up, it was the assistant to, I was hired as the assistant to the CEO. And then they started adding like the CEO, the CFO, the COO. So it was basically the assistant to the entire C suite of this advertising agency. Um, I learned a lot of lessons there. I learned a lot of lessons. I learned how to get my shit together because I did not have it. So I'm appreciative for that. I also learned that it was the first in my lessons of, if something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Um, Between that job and the one after that I took, I had some tough bosses, and not like worked me a lot, like worked me too hard, or expected me to pick up the phone and answer emails late at night. No, I won't go into too much detail, but it was really bad. Things were really bad, but I felt too inexperienced and too young, and I didn't know, like, is this just how it is, or do I just have to take it? Um, both both those roles, one in particular, that basically like my second job, um, really took a toll on my mental health. And then once I got out of that one, really looking back and realizing, like, okay, you are stronger than you're giving yourself credit for. You know that you were like in bad situations. Trust that gut, trust that instinct. And if that doesn't feel right anymore, like, listen to that and get out. So I that was a major lesson for me. That
Yeah.
was a major lesson.
It
Yeah.
sounds like it, and it sounds like, it's interesting you talked about in the beginning of this chapter, you saw that salary and was like, absolutely, absolutely. But when you're in a toxic work environment, which it sounds like that was your experience from one job, and then you leave to go to another toxic environment, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. And making the decision, the tough decision to choose you over a salary, knowing that what good is this salary if I'm not here to enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah. My hair was falling out. I was like stressed to the point of vomiting. Like it was bad. And that's why, so another one of my lessons that I was thinking about is like, it's it's something that I learned at some point, was like, it's okay to be motivated by money. Like, it's okay if that is your ambition and your driving force. That's totally fine. But exactly to your point, Stella, it's like when it gets in the way of my mental health, my physical health, what good is the money if I'm like, if I can't enjoy it? Um, so yeah, and that pushed me like farther down my path. And my dad was always one of those people who was like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. We've heard people that say that, and my husband and I, whenever we were around my dad and he would say that, we'd both be like, oh, come on, like you can't actually believe that. And he's like, no, he genuinely believed it. My dad like really, really loved what he did, and he loved his work. Um, and I realized in my last few jobs before diversity at workplace, before I did the career pivot, there was like a little voice in the back of my mind that was like, you don't care about this stuff? Like, why are you doing this? Kind of. And so I was always trying to find ways to do something that gave me more fulfillment and more enjoyment, whether it was help establish programs at those companies or in my own volunteer work outside of work. But it was not enough. And then finally during COVID, getting pushed off the hamster wheel of the industry that I was in, I was able to really listen to the voice that was in the back of my mind saying, like, you're not fulfilled from the work that you're doing. Why don't you try actually going down the path that's like been in the back of your mind? And that's, how I ended up at Diversity at Workplace.
So
And
let's talk about that because I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are almost at times. Can we?
yeah,
But let's talk about where your purpose and passion aligned with your career and how you came to that.
absolutely. And I mean, I think you heard me say it multiple times working together is like for the first time in my career working at Diversity at Workplace, I felt like my skills, my skill set as an employee and as a worker dovetailed with what I was passionate and cared about and felt like I was making a difference. And so I actually felt happy and fulfilled and productive at work, and I was like, this is what my dad was talking about. Like this is what he meant. And it was an incredibly rewarding experience to come full circle, to have everything dovetail. And I was able to bring, I didn't go into details, but I did sales for the majority of my career, the last, after leaving the advertising agency. And I was able to bring those skills, which doesn't necessarily seem like it would be a DEI, like that it would go together with DEI, but it did. And I think it was like an interesting, different perspective to bring to our workplace. Because it kind of felt so out of left field, but like, how can I apply that to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Absolutely, and I saw it firsthand. I saw all the tactics and skills that you've learned, not only just from the sales, but from advertising, into this role and how you cared for clients and in their pursuit of making a cultural shift within their organization. So I'm so appreciative that our professional paths cross because I continue to learn from you and your background and experience. So, talk to me about what's next in your career journey. What's on the horizon? What's your vision? And where are you now today?
Loaded question. As you know, unfortunately, our company just couldn't sustain the current attacks on DEI. Heartbreakingly, there were some layoffs at Diversity at Workplace, so I was part of those cuts, as you know, and so I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now. I have some like health things happen, so I'm focusing on kind of just coming back to myself, and then really trying to assess what it means for me, given that voice that was in the back of my mind that's now in the foreground and felt so fulfilling for me the last couple years working at DFW. How can I channel that, propel that forward, given the current climate and the current environment and what our industry is dealing with? So another conversation for another time, because I know we're almost at time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alex, I thank you so much for sharing your journey. In this next chapter, I am so looking forward to witnessing how things realign themselves, how you find your passion and purpose and align that with a role while maintaining a work life balance and being given the time and space to focus on your health, on your family. And so I thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your journey and all the twists and turns. This is exactly what I envisioned when I thought up of this series. And so I thank you so much for being candid, for being honest and open, and know that how much of an impact is going to make on individuals that are hearing this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. And thank you for everything that you've taught me while we were working together and beyond. And I look forward to continuing.
Absolutely. So I do have some Spitfire questions to end our time today, but I wanted to just give you space if there's any final words or thoughts or words of encouragement that you would like to give folks out there, please.
So I think just maybe end with something along, don't expect your career to be linear. I think that was a big learning for me. Is it's been a bit more of a bob and weave than I expected, and you gotta just roll with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. All right, so I have some Spitfire questions. Don't think too hard on this. Top of mind responses. Would love to hear it. You ready?
Ready.
All right. What is one song that when it comes on, it automatically shifts your mood?
I mean, you said what is one song when it comes on? Juvenile Back That Ass Up is the first thing that came to mind. So
I love it. I love it. You are the second guest that was the that was the response. There was another
dun,
guest.
dun, dun, like forget it.
First of all, whoever produced it, I'm not sure who the producer was, but they're like the 15 seconds lead in that they gave us to get our minds right to lose it.
To rush to the dance floor.
Genius.
Genius.
All right. All right. So I know you're Miami born and raised, Jersey. You're currently on the East Coast in Jersey. Miami slang or Jersey attitude? What comes out when you're mad?
Miami slang. Definitely. Oh yeah, I get the yeah.
All right. All right.
Have you seen it? Have you seen my Miami come out?
Okay. Last one. It's interesting. Sometimes I feel like it's East Coast, but
Mm,
then I'm like, oh, I could see Miami. So that's why I asked the question. I'm like, what do you call it? Because I think East Coast.
mm. Yeah, it's a bit I think it's a yeah, maybe the New York City like fast talking cuz I'm a pretty recent Jersey transplant. It's been like 18 years in New York City before moving to Jersey. So I think that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I that's why I say East Coast. I know
Yeah.
Jersey and New York. Don't at me, y'all. But I definitely see New York come out when you have been tried.
Yeah, you've seen that.
All right. So last question: what is the last book, TV show, podcast, fiction or nonfiction, that you have found impactful to you?
I just finished a book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow that is about video game developers, which interests me zero. And it was one of the best books I've read in at least the last 4 years. Like I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's excellent.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Adding it to my to-do list.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Tune in again next week. I got a two for next week. I got two guests coming on. I'm so excited as we continue this series. We got our last three guests coming on within the next couple of weeks. Thank you all so much for continuing to tune in, continuing to hear these stories. Alex, I wish you great health, great well being, and I cannot wait to see how everything transpires in your next chapter.
Thank you, Coach Stella. Great to chat as always.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.